There really is a new Half-Life game on the way. Nintendo are pushing forward with subscription services, another Mass Effect title is in early development, and we may have gotten our first look at the PS5's new controller. All of this and more on today's Roundup. Hey everyone, and welcome back to another edition of the Roundup. Of course, as always, be sure to like, sub, and ring that notification bell to let the YouTube algorithm know that you're enjoying the content. And with that, let's get cracking with the news. Thursday, the 19th of November was the 21st anniversary of Half-Life, and to celebrate it, this week Valve have officially announced their flagship VR title, Half-Life Alyx. Valve also revealed via their new Twitter account that a full reveal is going to be coming this week. Now, this is fairly interesting. Rumors of a Half-Life VR title have been going back as far as 2017, when Valve openly discussed that they were working on 3 full VR experiences. Now, when Index, Valve's own VR headset, leaked in 2018, rumors of a Half-Life game swiftly followed. Now, the most recent spate of stories came from a leaked interview between Valve and Jeff Keighley, which also suggests a release date of March 2020. Now, that it's a VR title may shock some people, but I think it'll make a lot of sense to the core Valve audience, especially when you look at Valve's track record. Half-Life as a franchise has often been a way for Valve to explore new techniques and technologies. The original Half-Life showed us that you could have a deep narrative and a very immersive experience in a shooter without sacrificing gameplay, and to this day it does remain a pioneer of interactive storytelling. Now, its sequel is then mostly known for its groundbreaking physics engine that made gravity a plaything. There's therefore been a sort of a long-standing belief that Half-Life 3 kind of couldn't happen unless it had a generational leap to really be built around, something to really make it new. Now, all that said, it's still unclear where exactly Alyx sits in the Half-Life timeline, and indeed, the VR title, it doesn't appear to be Half-Life 2 Episode 3 or Half-Life 3. Though, with the official reveal coming this Thursday, it does look like we're soon going to have a far better idea of where the series is headed next. Now, even before details are announced, I think it's interesting to speculate on the impact of a Half-Life VR title, and just what that's going to do for the medium. So, VR as a concept is still more novelty than mainstay for most when it comes to gaming hardware, and it does require a sort of a definitive must-play experience to really get it out there. And sure, Beat Saber's done that, maybe Boneworks could do that, but I mean, having the brand of Half-Life there to PC gamers, that is going to mean a hell of a lot. Now, personally, I love VR. I have been involved in VR since the Oculus DK2, and seeing Valve make a full experience, that's honestly thrilling. This has the potential to be a medium-defining breakout hit that truly sells VR. And Valve's Index, it pioneered finger-level detail on the tracking. It's got incredible controllers, so I think it's pretty clear that that tech has been made with Alyx in mind. I mean, just look at the gameplay of, say, Boneworks on the Node YouTube channel. If you look at that stuff, watch those videos, it is impressive stuff. And if applied to a VR Half-Life title, that could create an experience that would stay with you for years. Now, business-wise, this isn't going to sell as much as a regular game, sure, but if it pushes the industry forward, then that's a good thing. I think that's the type of brave innovation that we should be encouraging over just the standard roadmap gruel that is sold to us by the generic CEO of the generic game company that wants us, just to dominate the industry. Now, of course, it's also true that, this is a brave leap in technology, and Valve are sacrificing direct money by doing something a bit more niche in the, in the service of pushing that tech, but they also do benefit. They're going to sell Valve indexes through this, and it's going to expand a market that they do wish to be a leader in. So it's not like they're doing this purely out of the goodness of their heart. But that said, somebody who loves, technology, a bit of futurism, I think seeing Half-Life in that detail in VR, I think it's going to be really cool, but of course, more details following this week. Okay, next up we got some good news. So last week, Kotaku released a story detailing BioWare's plans to overhaul Anthem. Now, this information came from multiple sources within BioWare, and it just reaffirmed their commitment to investing in RPGs. And to that end, it was also revealed that a new Mass Effect title is in very early development right now. Mike Gamble, a veteran BioWare producer and project director, is at the helm of the project. Now, he tweeted a few weeks back asking what fans wanted for the future of Mass Effect. So it seems like that feedback actually might be used to lay the game's foundations, which is very interesting. Now, fingers crossed we'll get some details soon, though. Of course, Mass Effect, it had troubles with Andromeda. Hell, it had troubles with 3. 2 remains, I think, one of the greatest things that BioWare has ever made. and I think with Andromeda and Anthem, they would be mad not to know their mistakes. So I think there might actually be a little bit of hope with this one, but still, it's a little bit too early to tell. All that I'd say is I kind of would like, I would like a sequel. I'd like something to move the Mass Effect universe forward, but of course the problem there is, how do you do that given how they left off Mass Effect 3? Certainly a challenge for BioWare to overcome. Okay, next up, over the weekend it was revealed that Nintendo will be adding a pair of premium subscription services to Animal Crossing Pocket Camp. Now, details on the service are limited, though we do know that it's called the Pocket Camp Club, and it divides into two separate membership tiers. Yes, they really are going deep into this. The first tier lets players appoint a caretaker animal to help around their campsite, and the second plan introduces specialized item storage warehouses. And it's kind of interesting. This move makes Animal Crossing Pocket Camp the second Nintendo property to be given the premium membership treatment. And of course, that's all in, free-to-play games with premium currencies and all that stuff. Now, the Gold Pass service for Mario, that was a bit of a shock when it launched. I think people didn't see that coming. But Nintendo do appear to be committed to the strategy here. They are doing it again. Now, Pocket Camp is celebrating its second anniversary this month. And while the game sure does have its dedicated user base that love Animal Crossing, it has remained one of Nintendo's less profitable mobile ventures alongside Dr. Mario World, which in fairness is incredibly boring. Now, Nintendo have been experimenting with monetization in Pocket Camp for a while now through special events and a renewed emphasis on the game's premium currency. Yeah, it's all just depressing eye-roll stuff, isn't it? Now, the belief seems to be here that the Gold Pass worked for Mario Kart Tour, which brought in its first month 37.4 million in player spending. And look, it makes sense, but man, all this stuff just makes me so tired. And it's kind of sad seeing it come from Nintendo, especially when, being real, they do make games that appeal to children, and seeing the really deep monetization and the premium currencies and, just conditioning the kids, in that stuff in those games, it just seems a bit weird to me, especially when I know that what Nintendo really want is for them to, graduate to a teen and adult gacha game that's going to bring in way more money. And just feels a bit mean, doesn't it? Next up, though, we've got some good news of the industry moving in a better direction. So PUBG this week announced a significant change to the game's lock-and-key reward system, and it's a change for the better. So currently, players can spend in-game currency to obtain a loot crate. Now, that process is random, and typically the player ends up with a locked crate. Those locked crates can then only be unlocked using a key purchasable from the Steam Marketplace. And the good news is these crates will be phased out from December this year, at which point any crates purchased with BP will always be free to open. PUBG Corp will also be improving the quality of crate cosmetics to make them a bit more comparable to the direct purchase items. Now, this may just be a quality of life change in one game, but the reason why I'm covering it is that it's welcome, and it represents more of the larger players in the industry moving towards a more fair system for player rewards and just, the monetizing of their games. And whenever that does happen, I think it's good shining a light on that and just encouraging more of the industry to, abandon the loot box BS. And next up, moving from one battle royale to another, last week Call of Duty data miner SenseColo uncovered a 200-player battle royale mode that's supposedly coming to Modern Warfare as a free update. Now, while the game's Ground War multiplayer mode already has support for 100 players, this planned BR map looks to be way larger. The mode also has a new take on respawns, which is fairly interesting, so players will reportedly be able to obtain respawn tokens for downed teammates, which will place them into a lobby area with other defeated players. Those players can then battle each other in 1v1 to determine who gets to queue back into the game. So, pretty nifty innovation. Now, the BR genre has grown, I think, a bit stale as of late, so it's good to see a little bit of spark in there. And more broadly, if we're to do a business analysis of things here, we've already seen Modern Warfare take on Battlefield with its Ground War mode that I think's been mostly well received. And, if they're bringing new things to the BR genre, especially if that's to get a separate free-to-play release, then I think it could be major competition for the other BRs on the market, and probably would lead to, I'd say, a pretty significant uptick in Activision Blizzard stock price. Next up, Pokemon Sword and Shield released on Friday to pretty darn insane UK sales. Pokemon Sword is the UK #1 and represents the biggest Nintendo Switch exclusive of the year. It's also the third biggest box release of 2019, behind only FIFA 20 and Call of Duty Modern Warfare, both of which released on multiple platforms. Pokemon Shield came in at #3, with Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order bridging the gap at #2. But to confuse matters, the Sword and Shield double pack Yep, Game Freak still do that. It's listed separately, and it was in the 7th spot. So, put together, the two games represent the second biggest UK launch for the franchise. Now, Sun and Moon cannot be toppled, however. They were released when the 3DS had a pretty large install base. So, compared to the 3DS titles, Sword and Shield's physical launch is 39% lower. Now, that said, Nintendo have pushed the eShop a lot more as of late, so physical numbers will be lower relative to digital these days. And I think it's especially the case if you just compare the 3DS system to the, to the Switch and how they work. So an interesting thing, it seems like across the board that game is being better received than the early controversies would have suggested, and it is selling pretty darn well. Of course, more complete numbers will have to follow in time. And then next up, new images published this week by the Japanese Patent Office may have given us our first glimpse of the PlayStation 5's controller. Now, the images, which match a description of the PS5's prototype gamepad published by Wired back in October, well, they look very similar to the PS4's DualShock controllers. There are differences though. So the patent image shows a controller with larger triggers, slightly smaller thumbsticks, and a USB-C port, the latter of which I'm definitely all for. Now, the light bar appears to have been removed, which could mean increased battery life for the PS5 controller. We already know that the PS5 controller boasts some haptic feedback and a new adaptive trigger system, as well as an improved speaker. Now, a prototype controller, which Wired describes as being an unlabeled matte black doohickey, is currently being sent to developers, so all of that stuff does seem to line up. And I suppose it's always interesting when a new wave of consoles comes out, we do see iterations in the controllers, which of course, as a PC first gamer, is always interesting because they're often going to be the most heavily invested in types of controllers that ultimately we're going to end up using quite a bit for the PC games that make sense for a controller. But anyway, there you have it for today's edition of the Roundup. If you'd like more videos, we published 2 yesterday. The Anthem one I think is really interesting. We were a little bit late on it, so it didn't get as many views. But that said, there's also the Path of Exile video, which a load of people seem to enjoy. And it is very interesting seeing how a similar thing was tackled by both Grinding Gear Games and Blizzard Entertainment, and how Grinding Gear just took that player optics first approach and were really able to do it far more successfully. So, there you go, that's it for this video. Thank you very much for watching, and with that, I will see you next time.